Welcome to Small Biz Life, episode 30. Techniques to improve your confidence.
Does this sound familiar?
Oh my God, I have so much to do today.
Don't forget to breathe.
But I have almost 400 emails in my inbox and 30 phone calls to make.
Have you looked into getting a virtual assistant yet?
Oh, and I need to schedule all my social media posts.
Did you drink anything today?
I had coffee.
Did you eat today?
Did I mention coffee's a bean?
This is Small Biz Life.
Hi, I am Kristen Ingram.
And I'm Jeffrey W. Ingram.
Welcome to Small Biz Life. This is episode 30. And if you're new to the show, I am a certified public accountant who specializes in working with small businesses to help them grow their business through brainstorming and thinking outside the box.
And I am an IT analyst who has a background in business process reengineering and industrial engineering. And I live outside of the box.
You don't have a box.
No.
Yeah, there is no box as far as Jeff's concerned. So if you listen to episode 29, we talked about tips in order to help you improve your confidence. And a lot of these were short-term things that you can do to help bridge your confidence level over the short term. Today, we're going to talk about some longer-term techniques that you can use that will help you grow your confidence in reality.
Yeah.
Okay, so last week was kind of like, here's some things to kind of get you over the hump.
Yeah. And also tips are really good. Even when you have confidence, there's always going to be a thing that pops up here or there that you're going to lag with. And so tips help you get through the moment. Techniques help you improve.
Right. Okay, so today we're going to give you 5 techniques in order to help build your confidence for the long term. Okay, so the first one we have is to be mindful of yourself.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Well, besides being a lovely buzz term right now, everyone wants to be more mindful in all areas of their life. And when you're addressing actual confidence, it's all connected because being mindful is being mindful of yourself as a whole person and understanding that you do have weaknesses and strengths. And there are things that you're probably worried about that you don't need to. And if you're mindful, when you have the confidence attacking an actual skill, you know, that's where you can sort of follow the ACUF, just punch fear in the face and get past it because it's just one of those silly fear voices. But then there are also things that you actually need to work on as a human. No one's perfect, except for maybe our cats. So the idea is when you are working on actually building up your confidence, when you actually have identified your weaknesses, it's like any problem, you can start to solve it. You can start looking for ways to either educate yourself or, you know, if you're afraid of public speaking, just getting out there and starting with small groups or large groups. Some people don't have trouble with both. Some people do fine in a room, but then if you put them in an auditorium, the larger the group gets, the harder it becomes. And other people are more the opposite, where it's easier when there's no real individuals you can pick out of the crowd and they get a little maybe energy from it, but then you put them in small, more intimate circumstances and they lose their confidence a bit there.
So if you haven't listened to episode 14, in 14 we had you do a SWOT analysis. SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. You might want to go back and listen to that episode and do some work with those techniques in order to identify what your strengths and weaknesses are and grow further, right? Because it's really hard to figure out what you need to work on if you don't do the work to figure out what you need to work on.
Yeah. You know, you can't solve a problem by treating symptoms, and oftentimes the fear voices, the things that are noticeable are actually a symptom of the problem and not the problem itself.
Exactly. Okay. So you want to make sure you identify those weaknesses, right? Be mindful of the things. So when you're working in your business and, you know, you come upon a task where your heart starts beating faster or you kind of skirt around that task and you never really get that task done because you skip it and go on to other things. Those are the tasks that you need to sit down with and say, okay, why do I not want to do this? You know, what is the fear here? What is the weakness here that's keeping me from doing that piece?
Yeah.
And we all have that. I have items on my to-do list. I'm like, all right, I'm going to do this. I'll do that one later. I'll go back to that. So identify what those are and really spend some time thinking about them.
And, you know, the other thing to be mindful about is don't judge yourself for the quality of your problems. You know, this is one that sort of comes up in my life a lot, being a veteran, where people will talk, you know, they'll ask me about what, you know, like fear is, or, you know, what is courage really? And the thing is, most of these things are actually, they're set to an individual. So you have an individual who has a high pain threshold. It's because they've actually felt a lot of pain. And so it becomes familiar over time, and where maybe they notice it, it's not to the same level as the first time they felt the pain. And really it's kind of like a pain threshold when it comes to speaking in front of people, sharing your information on the internet, because there'll be some pain where there'll be people who don't agree with you, people who maybe don't like you. But these are all things that you can build a tolerance up to over time.
Right. And we'll talk about that when we talk about number 3. So number 2, you need to define your role and obtain the knowledge needed.
Yes.
So, you know, I think a lot of us, we come into this and we're like, we're going to be experts, right? And I can't move my business forward unless I'm an expert. And there's a number of different roles that you can take, whether you're a speaker, whether you're a writer, even in your day-to-day business, if you're helping other businesses or you're helping individuals, you don't have to be the expert. So what are some other options for people to position themselves?
I think the most interesting and underutilized one is the journeyman. You know, the person who's out there trying to become the expert, and they're spending time reading what other people are doing in the area and sharing that with their audience, and then spending some time coming up with their own perspective on that, and they're testing out the waters and they're sharing the journey. And the reason I think it's undervalued is most people, you know, if you ever want them to remember the main idea of any form of topic that you're doing, is you share a story with it. You know, it could be either one of those good old grandpa stories sitting on the front stoop, you know, telling you about this time where he got in trouble in school, and you learn a story from that and it sticks with you because of the story. And in the same way, other stories aren't quite as obvious, but like a case study is really a story of why something worked or did not work. There's this term they use a lot in technology, which some people maybe might find a weird term, but they call them postmortems. So when you have a major project, you hear especially a lot in like video game industry, they'll have a postmortem of like Doom, you know, like what worked, what didn't work for this giant video game. And you'll find there are successes and failures throughout successful projects and failed projects. The differences between the two is one was put to completion and worked, and the other one failed somewhere along the path.
Right. So a lot of people think that they can't get started until they're an expert in their field. And one of my first online projects was a site that eventually was named Payment Free Life. It was originally called Cling to Cash, and then we rebranded it to Payment Free Life. In that project, I was blogging as we were getting out of debt. So I was sharing what worked for us, what didn't work for us. Sometimes there were stumbles along the way, and I wrote about that. And I was writing about our journey through it. I didn't wait until we got out of debt to start writing and say, hey, this is what I did and you should do this too. I wanted to show people like the struggle that we went through, you know, and share the wins as we were doing it. And so you can take that position. If you listen to a lot of podcasts are someone interviewing an expert. And so they're taking the knowledge from that expert and sharing it with other people as they're learning along the way.
Yeah.
So figure out where you are in your journey. You know, you may not be too expert yet, but that doesn't mean you can't start.
Yeah.
You know, one of the big things that draws people in is when you are authentic.
Yeah.
And so if you're not at expert level yet, don't pretend you're there. Show people where you are now and let them follow that journey with you.
Yeah. And the thing to remember is too, is let's say you're in a complicated field. Like for a while I was working as an industrial engineer, and I would not call myself an expert at industrial engineering. However, if I was to start going down a path where that was going to be my expert knowledge I was speaking about, I would start talking about the techniques and tools that I did master early on that would allow me to start building them up. And so you're re-exercising those skills, which will hopefully start building up your higher level skills as you grow along too. So if you have 10 years of experience at something, you have expert knowledge at parts of it at least. And you can even focus on those parts early on. And then as you become more expert in the other parts, start sharing more information in those other parts as well too.
Exactly. I mean, even for this show, you know, I'm an expert in accounting. Jeff is an expert in areas of IT. And a lot of the stuff like marketing, you know, we're learning this as we're teaching it to you.
Mindfulness, not a skill that I have.
Yeah, neither one of us are super mindful. So, you know, we're going on this journey with you where we're learning new things that can help us improve our business and you improve your business. And so we don't sit down and say, oh, well, we're not an expert in this. We can't talk about this. But a lot of times we'll talk about books that we've read. We'll talk about techniques that we've learned about, and we do research in order to be able to share it with you.
Or we'll be inspired by an article and maybe we're pretty good with a couple of the points and we want to share our perspectives. However, there are other points that we have to think more about and do some research on because, you know, when you're sharing advice to people, you don't want to just wing it without any faith that it's going to bring them value.
Exactly. So you don't have to rely on just your own knowledge. You know, you can go through and do research. You know, a lot of times in IT, we see this where you see something online, you want to verify, you want to do more research on it so you can share it with your, you know, with your tribe.
Here's a great thing to remember with IT. One thing people who make software are pretty good at is getting their ideas shared out. And so you have to be very careful when you're researching, especially an established market product like virus scanning software comes to mind specifically. The basic stuff that's been around for a long time, you can find millions of reviews on these things. And a lot of these reviews are essentially affiliates trying to push their affiliates on you. And, you know, you have to kind of go in and read the review to find out, well, what kind of information are they sharing back that I can have faith that this is actually a valid review and not just someone reiterating what other people are saying so they can get a little bit of money here or there at potentially the expense of the people who follow them.
Right. So make sure that when you're going through and you're doing that research that you're looking at who the resources are.
Yeah. And one other thing with understanding your role is understand that you'll only ever be one voice in whatever area you're talking about. There could be lots. There could be some big names out there. There might not be any if it's an area that really hasn't in the expert space. Writhe and joy when you meet these other people and you get a chance to interact with them. Don't be afraid to share out their content, even though you might classically even think of them as a competitor because maybe they're even developing products very similar to yours. Understand there are a lot of people who are going to be out there, and maybe your voice isn't the one to help them. Maybe it's the other person's voice. So part of your role is to understand that you're probably not going to be the only person having roles in this area.
That's a really interesting point because I think a lot of times we get into this headspace where we get annoyed with competitors or who we perceive as our competitors. But I am a big believer that with my clients, like if somebody comes to me and says, I'm looking for a financial advisor, I will give them options. I'll give them like 5 different names and say, go talk to each one of these people and see which one you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
Because the advisor that I like might not be the advisor that you like. And you have to make sure that when you're working with somebody that you find the people that you jive with the best.
Yes.
And so just because there are people out there that you perceive as your competition doesn't mean that you can't work together.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that you can't share each other's stuff. Because it's funny because one of the groups I'm in, they were talking about a particular business coach, and a lot of people didn't like this person's style, but other people really did. Your style might be perfect for, a particular group of people, but it might not work for other people.
And if you have what you call or consider a bad client, they might be someone else's ideal avatar. So it's very important to know the people and interact with the people who are in your space and just share freely of your stuff. I'm a big believer that your ultimate goal should be to help the people you're trying to help. And even if largely they're with you, sooner or later, you probably can't create content fast enough for them to keep feeling like they're learning something new. So they're going to burn out on you and maybe become stagnant. But if there's you and some of your, quote unquote competitors can work together, maybe some of these people are shifting back and forth because, wait, this person's perspective is a little bit different than the other person's. So maybe they spend some time and money with you, some time and money with them. And if everyone's goal is ultimately to help them out, you're really doing a better service to the people you're working with.
Right. And that's why we said in episode number 4 that you have to identify your ideal customer and not try to go after everyone. So if you haven't listened to episode 4 on how to identify your ideal customer, you may want to go back and listen to that episode as well. And we'll put links to, everything that we're talking about in this week's show notes at smallbizlife.com.
Woohoo.
Okay. So number 3, work your fundamentals.
That's right. Take it to the hoop. Motion offense. You keep the ball moving in the perimeter. You pass the ball in. The guy shoots the layup. Easy 2 points. This one speaks a lot to me being from Indiana and loving basketball. That's something I grew up learning. You practice your fundamentals. And if you've seen me play basketball, you will know that I have not. But I blame my hand size because it's too small to really grip a basketball well. But with that aside, though, I could improve my basketball game if I practice dribbling more, if I practice shooting more, if I practice rebounding and elbowing people.
So, they say practice makes perfect, right?
Yes.
And a number of other people have said this, but I remember when I was reading The Art of Work by Jeff Goins, he said it takes 10,000 hours to master a skill. You get better at what you're doing over time.
Yes.
I've spent, at this point in my career, I've spent over 10,000 hours working with small business owners. That's why I have a lot of confidence in that realm because I've done it for such a long time. I don't think I have 10,000 hours of podcasting yet.
No.
I don't think so. But if you go back and you listen to the first shows that we did, and then you listen to the later episodes, there's a vast difference in even just the way that we speak. I think we've both become much more cognizant, and you've got like 100 and something episodes of World Builders Anvil under your belt. We've both become more cognizant of the way that we speak on the podcast. There's a lot less because we've practiced techniques to try to get past that.
Yeah.
So we still do it. It still happens.
Which goes a lot to point 4.
But we still keep going and we still try to improve. We don't just go and sit in front of the microphone and say, okay, go. You've got to do your show prep. You've got to know what points you're talking about. And so, which we didn't do a whole lot of in the first dozen episodes or so. We just kind of sat down and went, okay, go. But now we do like 15 minutes of show prep before we sit down at the mic.
At least.
When you figure out what your weaknesses are, remember, go back to step 1 and think about that SWOT analysis that we were talking about. You have to practice. The first time you get in front of a microphone, it's probably not going to be great. The first time you do a Periscope, probably not going to be great. But even, I've got a really good friend of mine, Ronnie Harden, who does Coffee Talk with Ronnie every weekday morning at 8:02 Eastern. And the way that she periscopes, if you go back and watch like the first ones and how she does it now, and she's even acknowledged that she's got a lot better at what she does. It's practice. It's going out there, every day and making it happen.
Yeah, doing it. Now, one of the things I want to bring up here is, and this is one I found out when I started podcasting. I thought podcasting would be a lot easier for me because I have a background in theater. And so I would get up on stage and I would deliver lines to an audience. And I was very good at improvising on stage. I'm a little crazy. I'm one of those people who get fed by the energy of an audience. I typically don't get nervous. However, when I started podcasting, I listened to myself. I learned that even though you think those two skills are related, they're not, because when you're stage acting, most stages you're on, unless the acoustics are bad, will not put microphones on you because the sound it's not as good. It's not pure theater. So what happens is you project your voice from the stage, and if I would project my voice right now, I would get much, much louder than I am. And you have this great range of your voice that you use to try and convey meaning and context, which you need to exaggerate a little bit on stage. A microphone is much more intimate. It's more like talking to a person. So if you try and deliver to it theatrically, the editing's very difficult because you have this huge range in your voice. So some parts you're going to sound really low, which I do have trouble with sometimes. And sometimes you're going to sound very high. And I won't do that to protect your ears right now.
I appreciate that. Thank you. That's very helpful. But it's very true. Like I have done a lot of YouTube videos. And so I thought the same thing as Jeff is that, this is going to be really easy. I'm just going to go out there and I'm going to do a podcast. And I realized that no, it's a lot different.
Yeah. And the thing you're going to find too is the closer they're related, like say going from YouTube videos to a podcast, the quicker you can reach that level of mastery than you could if you've never done any kind of speaking for production purposes.
Right, exactly. So for me, going from teaching in the classroom to teaching online through YouTube, that was a much easier transition than going from even speaking on a topic to doing a podcast on a topic. I think that was a little bit harder because when you're speaking live, you get feedback from your audience. And here you don't until after the podcast is edited and up and done.
And then sometimes you still don't because they listened to it and enjoyed it, but there wasn't a special moment that made them run out to the page to let you know that, that was great.
Yeah. So And here's the thing, go back to what we said before about not waiting until you get to the expert level. Don't work on your skill until you get to that 10,000 hours and then decide that you're going to launch it out there. Use that time to practice as interaction with your customers. So if you're not good at networking, and that's the thing that you want to build up, and that's what we're going to talk about next week is networking. Don't wait until you think you're a great networker to go out there and start networking.
Yeah.
Practice the skill and you'll get better.
Yeah, most definitely. And also you get a lot of advice from modern day online entrepreneurs to always talk about as soon as you starting a project, start gathering email addresses. And, a lot of the advice too is you can use behind the scenes kind of footage to try and increase interest in what you're getting ready to do. So whether you're launching a book or you're starting, to say, go speak at events, when you do these things, as soon as you know it, and let's say it's going to take you a year for budgetary purposes to, get everything set up, the first thing you do is get a website, get your email address, and whether it's video or audio or through the written word, whichever you're more comfortable with, start sharing through your newsletter immediately. Start coming up with opt-ins immediately, because even if you only get 10 customers before you launch, that's 10 that you already have that you didn't have a year ago.
Right. Exactly. All right. Number 4, attack your fear. Stop, think, do.
Yeah, this one's a big pet peeve of mine. For some people think of attacking your fear is to just do. And doing's important. But the thing is, you need to take a moment, stop, think, and do. Because when you do all those in coordination with each other, you're less likely to go, and then I'm going to say, because your brain is trying to catch up with your mouth at the same time to deliver the content. If you take just a moment, and trust me, I understand that if you're in that moment, especially when you're talking to more than one person, the moment feels like it goes on for eternity. There's like this, oh my goodness, I just seem like an idiot right now, voice going through your head because you're taking so long to say the next word. And then you watch a video of it, or people come up to you afterwards, and time again, and I've seen this in theater where major snafus have happened. Everyone in the cast is laughing about it backstage, going, oh my goodness, that was really bad. Like someone dropped a line and it looks like they've all frozen for hours. And afterwards, the audience come up and they go, that was such a great show. And you're like, really? You didn't see anything wrong there? And no. Because one, they don't know exactly what you're delivering. But 2, that long moment of eternity is 2 seconds. 1 second.
Fraction of a second.
A fraction of a second. It just feels a lot longer to you as it's happening than to people who are interacting with it from the third person.
Yeah, exactly. So when you start to feel fear build up inside you, the first thing you need to do is you need to stop and acknowledge that it's happening. Mm-hmm. So, we had talked about before those items on your action list that you keep, skipping or moving around, or they never get done. You've got to stop and acknowledge that those things exist. And you've got to think about why those are happening. Mm-hmm. Because you can't get past the fear if you don't face it. Mm-hmm. Once you've done that, then you can develop a plan to do something about it. Yeah. Fear is one of those things that a lot of times we don't know we don't even know it's really there.
Yeah.
Right? We say, okay, well, it's something I'm not good at. It's something that I need to work on. There's something about me, but you're never really acknowledging that the fear exists. You're just looking at it and saying, okay, well, this is something I don't like to do. Mm. This is something I don't want to do. Well, why? A lot of times it's fear. Yeah. Right? That's driving you not to do something.
And don't get me wrong, sometimes the stop, think, and do is a 1 second thing where you just stop and go, wait, I was not expecting that question. Let me just quickly go through my inventory of thoughts on the topic and deliver the information I can. Okay, I want to talk about this thing. And then you talk about it. That might take 1 second. Other times, depending on the complexity of the issue and the kind of format you're in, you have more time to stop and think before you do. The trick is not to get caught and think or stop. And it's not to jump to do, because if you jump to do, you are just reacting. You're not actually delivering the content the way you want to.
Right. And I've done a number of like free-form Q&As with different people for either their courses or, you know, they have my friend Ronnie Harden. We did a blab a couple weeks ago. And those are really scary for a lot of people because you have no idea what you're going to get asked. Mm-hmm. You know, I did a tax one a couple of months ago where it was a Q&A. Mm-hmm. And I spent an hour answering people's questions about taxes. And that's a really scary thing because you have no idea what people are going to ask. And you don't want to sit there and go, well, I don't know. I have no idea. So one thing that I did to prepare for that is I spent a lot of time in the groups that I'm in online. And I'm very fortunate to have this team of people who are in these groups with me that tag me when people ask business or tax questions. And so I will go through and I will answer people's tax questions, or I'll answer their bookkeeping questions, or answer their business questions to help me prepare for those kinds of speaking engagements. Because the more prepared I feel going into it, the more questions I've answered for people in the last couple weeks, the better prepared I am for when I'm live.
And you also find out there's a reason why websites call it frequently asked questions, FAQs. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Because usually around certain topics, there are certain kinds of questions that rise to the top a lot more often. And you'll find even when you're in a scenario where it's about a certain topic, and so you prepare for that certain topic, don't be shocked if someone comes out with a question in the Q&A that is related, just not what you thought you were talking about that day. So
right. And you know what? When that fear hits and you go, oh my God, I don't know the answer, take a second, right? Compose yourself, because you're going to freak out. You're going to go, oh my God, I don't know that. That's when you say, you know what? I'm not really positive on the answer to that, but I will look it up for you. If you send me an email, mm-hmm. I will make sure that I get you the full answer to that. Mm-hmm. And then the nice thing with that is you're actually making a connection with someone. But it's okay to say, I don't know. You don't, if you're in a Q&A and there's 40 questions and you answer, I don't know, to 35 of them, probably, that's not great. But I know I was doing a Q&A session on taxes, and somebody asked a question about Australian taxes. And I said, I'm really sorry, that's not my area of expertise. I only work with US based clients. Mm-hmm.
And that's a fair response. Because once again, you can't provide every service to every person in the area that you're even in.
Right. So it's okay to say that. It's okay to say, I don't know. But you need to follow that up with, but you know what? Give me your contact information. I'll get you the answer. Even if you're in a network setting and somebody says, hey, can I ask you a quick question? You can say, you know what? That's something that I'm going to need to look up for you.
Or also be willing to say, that's not a quick question. Mm-hmm. It's going to take, there's a lot of detail I need from you. And if they're not quick questions, in those kinds of scenarios, be honest and maybe give a very brief overview, but, try and ignore the specifics and say, if you have a specific question, you'll need to contact me because it's actually complex and here are the reasons why.
Right. So make sure, this is a possibility for you to turn a networking opportunity or a Q&A answer into a client by saying, you know what, that's going to take more time. Give me your contact information and we can set up a time to sit down and talk about that. Mm. So I think that's a really good point. But make sure that you identify the fear, stop to acknowledge it, and then figure out how you're going to respond. And a lot of times, Jeff's right, it's a split-second thing. Okay. Number 5, take meaningful action.
Well, this one makes me smile because I always think of, and you see these in movies all the time, where there's the character who is put into a tough position and they panic and they start, doing everything around them. You know, they start cleaning their house, they're vacuuming at the same time, they're lifting up children and putting them on their shoulders. They are shoveling out a ditch in their yard. They start doing 5,000 tasks because they're panicked about one. And usually when it's your business, these one tasks are your goals. And what happens is you get distracted and panicked. So you start doing as much as you can. You know, you're reading a book while you're listening to a podcast, while you're watching an educational video, and you are feeding your kitty. And you're doing all of this at once, and you're really not even doing any of them effectively. You're just trying to do a lot because you're not sure where to go. And when you have your goals set up, the advantage is you can sit there and go, of these actions I need to take, you know, which get me to those goals. You know, earlier on, you know, we mentioned this briefly in this episode and the episode, I believe, about goal making, your next actions. You know, always look at the actions you're going to take. And if something comes up spontaneously, take a moment, you know, have that mission statement above your computer to look at and say, does this task get me to those goals or my mission? What am I achieving by doing this task? And sometimes you'll find out that a lot of the tasks that come up that you think need to be done because they happen to pop up and you think, oh, I need to take care of this right away, aren't necessarily a right away issue. And they don't actually help propel you towards your goal.
Right. And that's one thing that I really like about the planner that we're using right now. It's called the Spark Planner. And I'll put the link in the show notes. But essentially, what it does, it has you create annual goals, then it has you create monthly goals, and it has you create weekly goals. But every week, you're supposed to go back and look at your yearly goals and your monthly goals and say, okay, the goals that I'm writing, are those jiving with? Yeah. Are they helping me achieve my monthly goals and my yearly goals?
And now the reason why this is so important for confidence is when you lack confidence in an area, you have to be especially careful that you're, once again, not avoiding that action item that's been on your list for 17 years. You know, there's a reason why it's been on your list for 17 years. You said it's need to be done for 17 years, but you refuse to do it. You don't say you refuse to do it. You're just like, wait, this other thing comes up, or for whatever reason, you know, make sure they're meaningful, and, you know, you have to address the actions that aren't meaningful to find out, one, if you have enough time to accomplish it, and two, is this really related to what I'm doing?
Right. Absolutely. Because that's the thing is, like, if you're taking action and it's not meaningful action, then you're just kind of spinning your wheels. And that may be why you're not seeing the growth that you want to see in your business. You have to tie your action items for the week back to your monthly goals, back to your annual goals. And if you're not doing that, you're probably not going to make the progress that you're looking for.
Yes.
Okay, so just kind of to go through again real quickly, you want to make sure that you're mindful of yourself. And you might want to listen to episode 14 on the SWOT analysis. You want to make sure that you define your role. And that doesn't mean that you're the expert. Okay, it might mean that you're the journeyman, right? Taking your followers, taking your tribe along with you on the journey. You want to make sure you work your fundamentals. Practice, practice, practice. And you will get better at those things that you don't believe you're good at. Attack your fear. When you feel fear coming on, pause for a second. Think about how you're going to respond and then go through and do it. And take meaningful action. Don't just say, okay, I'm going to do this. Right? Make sure that that action is going to take you where you want to go next. Okay?
Sounds good to me.
Sounds great. Okay, so hopefully you really enjoyed these last two episodes. The show notes will link to everything that we talked about, the old episodes. Jeff Goins' book, we mentioned John Acuff. I'll put a link to his book Start in there. And we're at the beginning of the month, so this is a really good time to look at your goals, make some goals for this month, and move your business forward. So thank you so much. We'll see you again next week. Thank you for listening to Small Biz Life. If you enjoyed the show, please take a few minutes to rate and review the show on iTunes or Stitcher. Please visit smallbizlife.com to view today's show notes, take this week's poll, join the Facebook community, follow us on Twitter, or submit a question for the mailbag. Support the show by checking the resources page or by going to smallbizlife.com/Amazon whenever you shop.
This was Small Biz Life. This was Small Biz Life.